Good morning. It's been a bit of a rough few days here. My daughter had a serious accident on Thursday, and so we've been dealing with that. She was supposed to have surgery this morning, but last night she was really sick, which we don't know whether was a bug she caught up in hospital or a reaction to the morphine and the shock. But either way, surgery can't go ahead as planned. We're hoping for Tuesday, Wednesday. And in this time, I've had a lot of time to think, obviously, about my daughter and about the NHS, who have been phenomenal. And you kind of expect nothing less from the NHS, because for all the people that tell us it's broken, it's not. The soul of the NHS is alive and well. The resources are pushed. That's why we're waiting for surgery. We couldn't get a CT scan. And yet they've moved heaven and earth for us. They've done everything they possibly can to treat her as carefully, efficiently and as quickly as possible. But, you know, sometimes you can only do what you can do. And it has made me think an awful lot about if we can, should we? So we, in this instance, this is an emergency case. So it's not an opportunity for us to be thinking about going private. But if this turns into long-term care, then it will be something that we need to think about. We are lucky. My partner gets health insurance through work. Should we use that? Well, Keir Starmer's right. When his mum was ill, she had care on the NHS, and it is stellar. It's platinum. I mean, it's the best in the world, I think. And I think he thinks that too. Because of that, does it give us the right to use it because it's amazing? I know we want to, but should we? Particularly given everything we know about the NHS at the minute, given that we know that hospitals are saying we're at capacity, we're completely overwhelmed with the flu. If you don't need to, please don't come. We know that it's stretched as far as it can go, and Wes Streeting has said, if you can, then please use private. And I agree with that. I think he's right. I think that just because the NHS is there, if we are in a position where we could use private healthcare, I think we should. I think we all love the NHS. We all know its capacity. We all know its limits of ability. We know it is the highest quality, but we also know that the more and more of us that use it, the harder it's going to be to maintain those standards to exist. So when Keir Starmer says things like, I wouldn't think about using private, it looked after my mum so well, I will only use NHS, I think, well, no, actually, it's not a right. It's not an entitlement. And we talk a lot about entitlement in private school education, you know, and the entitled privileged. Well, entitlement works both ways, doesn't it? Because Keir feels he's entitled to an NHS treatment plan or to use the NHS because he pays his taxes, and of course he is able to do that. But does that mean he should? Morally, should he be using the NHS, or should he, because he is earning, you know, in excess of hundreds of thousands of pounds, should he be saying, I can afford to go private, so I'm going to go private so that the people that aren't earning hundreds of thousands of pounds can use state? And I'm still really struggling to know why we're not applying that to private education. I still really struggle to know that just because state education is available, if you are earning in excess of £150,000 a year, should you not consider using private education? Should you not consider unburdening the state a bit? Because it is a privilege to have high quality healthcare on the state. And it is a privilege to have high quality education on the state, because we're a privileged nation. We are. We can't deny that. And it's a moral dilemma. It's not politics. It's not stats. It's not graphs. It's not the last government did this, so this government's doing that. It's morals. It's what's the right thing to do. There are people in education that can't access private education, but there are people in state education that can access private education. So if we are living in areas where schools are buckling, should they not then, of their own volition, use private education? If my daughter's health care after she's had the emergency surgery that she needs, if that can be managed privately, and if we're able to do so, should we not do that? Because there will be somebody else like her who needs the care that she's had, that needs the attention she's had, which has been like no other. I don't think she'd want another little girl to miss out on the treatment that she's had. I know I wouldn't. So just because we can use the NHS, I don't think that's our right that we should. And just because we can use state education, I don't think that's our right that we should. If we have the ability, if we can see what's going on, if state education is, as we're being told, falling apart at the seams, then I think there is a moral obligation in society to look after those who need it most. And it doesn't always have to come from taxes. It doesn't always have to come from VAT. It could come from people making a decision that actually the right thing to do is to move themselves or their children out of one environment and put them into another, which will free up space for those who do desperately need it. I can't thank the NHS enough. I agree with Keir. It served me as a child so well, and it's doing the same for my daughter. But that doesn't mean that we have a right. That means that we were privileged to be able to use it, and we need to make sure that other people are privileged to be able to use that too. I think it's our moral obligation. I expect lots of people won't agree with me. These are just my musings. You don't have to agree with me. But sometimes you need to stand in the shoes of the real life situation to understand what it looks like for real. And sometimes you need to feel it. And for all the politicians that are making these vast sweeping statements about what we need to do, perhaps walk in our shoes for a day, for a week. Perhaps be the child that is bullied so mercilessly at school that all they want is the sanctuary of a smaller classroom and help. And if that can't be provided in state, why shouldn't they go private if they can? It's definitely a moral one. It's where politics gets grey and murky, and I've always said for me this is policy driven. But it's also societally driven. And as a society, I think we do need to look with slightly more focused eyes on what we can each individually do. It doesn't always have to be about tax. Sometimes it's just about doing the right thing.